So, back outside, and today we are going to look at a BC-222, part of SCR 195. This is a fairly well-known military radio, U.S., from the late 30s and into World War II. You do see these on eBay quite a bit, and actually some people have gotten these things to work. It's a very early, well, walkie-talkie sort of. You don't actually use like a modern walkie-talkie, of course. You have to have a headset and a battery box, neither of which are shown here. But the things work. It's a very interesting, very minimal design using, I think, something called a quench oscillator. Only 2 tubes. That's it. It's early VHF, fairly low VHF. And the BC-222 covered 28 to 52 megahertz, and then there was a companion to BC-322 that continued the band up into 65 megahertz, I believe. Let's take a look at this one because it's weird. So here's the tag. You can see this is a BC-222 T3E1, made by Cardwell. The date's 1935. Serial number 1. This is one of the prototypes. And you can tell that from the T3 designation. The T suffix on signal corps equipment, at least the pre-war and up until about mid-war equipments, that means tentative. It means they haven't quite figured things out yet. And T3 means that this is the third BC-222 that they more or less tried out. Essentially means prototype. I don't know what the E1 stands for. This is the only set I've seen, and I've seen quite a few prototypes of various things. I don't know what the E1 designation means, but T3 means this was the third tentative design. So there was a T1, there was a T2, there may have been a T4, T5, T6, who knows? But there definitely was a T1 and a T2. I know nothing about those, and in fact those could have been paper tigers. They maybe never got built. And you know, who knows, they could have been from different contractors, different designers, and maybe prototypes were made, maybe not. Anyway, this is the third version, and it's weird. First of all, you'll notice that the band here is 52 to 65, which is normally taken up by the BC-322. So I suspect that basically the BC-322 didn't really exist yet in the minds of the Signal Corps. Keep in mind, this is 1935. You can see there the date there, and focus. The order number, mind you, the 35, the date there, and such like that. That's generally, when you see the 35 there, that's the fiscal year. It's pretty close to where it's actually going to be. Let's take a look at this. It looks pretty much like a standard BC-222, doesn't it? Take the lid off. See if I can do this one-handed. There we go. And instantly it gets strange. Take the front off. And it gets stranger yet. So you can see this is quite a bit different from the BC-222s that you see all the time. Most of them that you see are 1937 models and 1941 models. I think I've seen 42s. This is 35. And you can see, way different. First off, the big dial. The big dial is gone. You know, you still have frequency knob, of course. And you have most of the controls that you normally see, but there's an extra volume knob here. The connector is a Yaxley. It is not your standard Signal Corps type. And yes, that does appear to be original. That's where the handset goes. On regular BC-222s, it's of course one of those big pin Signal Corps types from the 30s. So, strange Yaxley connector. let's take a look inside. Gotta step over the cat here. Other things you can see. Well, it's got 3 coils, and the coils are slightly different. They look a little bit bigger, and they clip onto the side in a different fashion. They use little thumb screws. The tubes are the same. I believe the tubes are the same. The main tube is a VT67, which is a Type 30, and I got to show you. This is probably the most beautiful. If I can get it out. This is probably the most beautiful 30 I have ever seen. Ceramic-based Sylvania. Oh, you know, if it wasn't in this radio, it would be pulled out and put in my collection. I suppose it sort of is in my collection. It's just on display inside of a radio. You can see the capacitor is a little different. And you can also tell the prototype nature because apparently they screwed up a little bit of design here. Let's see if we can get started for the light here. But you can see they apparently had some clearance issues, so they had to basically chip out that piece of Bakelite in order to probably clear the pot there. The other tube is a 33. It's an RCA, pretty standard looking. Here is, let's go this way. Here's the schematic. So, close sorta. Like I said, very minimal design. Let you guys look at that. You can pause and read that if you want. A little bit of staining. Now we can take a look underside. I did loosen this up previously. So we'll just stick this down here. This is aluminum, just like the normal one. Got our calibration crystal. And there is the underside. And yeah, a little different, but it still uses this 5-pin, which that connects to the battery box. Now, I do not have a manual for this. I got this off of eBay quite some years ago. And I always wanted a BC-222, and I specifically wanted a pre-war one. And then this thing showed up, a prototype. And yeah, I zapped that thing up as best as I could, and here it is. So, an interesting variant. See, the capacitor is a bit bigger. Nice Bliley crystal. But nearly the same. This, of course, is the calibration knob, because you need to beat the oscillator against that crystal, and that will give you a reasonably close frequency. Yeah, you know, this is a pretty sloppy radio, but what do you expect for the era? You know, this was kind of a wonder at the time. Really, a walkie-talkie VHF that one guy could carry around? I mean, that was pretty incredible for back then. And yeah, BC-222s did get use. Not a whole lot. By the time World War II came about, they were pretty much obsolete. And I think by World War II, they were mostly into training roles. And let's face it, there were better radios by then. But then again, you know, by World War II, this was a 6-year-old design, and stuff was moving fast. Technology was moving fast in in the late 30s, and especially the very early days of World War II. So, yeah, BC-222, it kind of got eclipsed by other designs. Will I ever get this thing running? I don't know. Probably not. Once again, don't have a manual. At least I have a schematic. But you know, some people have gotten BC-222s working, like at the MRCA and or the MRCG show. I always confuse those military radio collectors groups. One of them's on the East Coast, one of them's on the West Coast. I do occasion both of them sometimes. But guys have had communications with these things, and the damn things work. They actually work. Not well, but they work. So, maybe it might be kind of neat to maybe lend this out and see if I can get one of those guys to screw around with it, see if they can get it to work. I myself am not a ham, so I shouldn't be running these things. So yeah, BC-222 T3 E1, sorry, E1. I have no idea what the E means. If someone could clue me in, I'd like to find a source of what that means. I have some directories, Signal Corps directories from the mid 30s, from the early 30s, that list all the BC numbers up to the point, and they don't explain what that E means. And hey, I don't know. Example? Maybe it's example. But T is definitely tentative. And oh, don't be confused. Later on, T meant training item. And especially, in fact, it's officially a training item in the nomenclature system that replaced this, the Jet DS, or the AN system as it's mostly called. T meant training system. But unfortunately, there was a lot of confusion during the transition between naming systems, and sometimes T meant training system for the later Signal Corps designated stuff. So it gets kind of confusing. But basically, if it's pre-war gear or even early war gear and it's got that T designation, that means tentative. And that means that it is more or less a prototype. They were trying things out. If it turned out to be a good design, they would get rid of the tentative designation and give it a real designation. So it appears that this particular set was not the winner of the competition. You know, maybe T1 was, maybe T2 was, I don't know. But if this were in fact the winner of the competition, to see, put it out in the field, see how it works, the T3 would be dropped and it would become the BC-222. But, well, this guy never flew. There was something better than it. Okay, well, I hope you enjoy this. Leave a comment if you know anything. I'd like to know if anyone has any of the other prototype BC-222s. It'd be neat to see what the T1, the T2, and anything else. See the differences, because as you can tell, this one is slightly different. Yep, leave a like if you like this. Leave a comment. Maybe subscribe. I will try and do some more of my pre-war military radios, pulling them out of storage, and do videos on them, because, well, you people should see these things. Okay, talk to you later. Bye now.